After the creation of the Coast Guard in 1915, the Coast Guard was primarily utilized to enforce America's neutrality policy in World War I. However, after 1917, when the United States finally entered the war, the Coast Guard once again came under the direction of the Navy, and several Coast Guard cutters were deployed overseas to aid in the war, including the Ossipee, Seneca, Yamacraw, Algonquin, and the Manning. These cutters help protect waters and escort marine vessels in areas such as the Strait of Gibraltar near the United Kingdom, Bermuda, and along the coast of Nova Scotia. Also among these cutters was the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, or USCGC Tampa, formerly known as the USRC Miami, the same cutter responsible for the transport of Navy troops during the Civil War. As was the case with most wars that the Coast Guard was involved in, the USCGC Tampa started off well and was successful in escorting several vessels during the war, but would ultimately meet its fate in the fall of 1918 on a mission to Wales after successfully finishing its escort in the Strait of Gibraltar. The ship was believed to be sunk by a German submarine known as the UB-91. According to the United States Coast Guard official history website, it is recorded as the largest loss of life by any U.S. naval vessel in World War I. The Coast Guard would execute similar roles in World War II, starting with the enforcement of FDR's neutrality policies in the years preceding the war. By the spring of 1941, however, the Coast Guard was beginning defense operations in Greenland and along the United States East Coast to help protect the United States from German forces. The USCGC Northland was assigned originally to Greenland for defense missions and was one of the first vessels sent to an Arctic region. This is what would establish the Coast Guard's polar icebreaker network after the war. The Northland was also famous for capturing the Norwegian ship Busko, the first captured vessel made by American forces in World War II. By the fall of 1941, just a few months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Coast Guard was brought under the command of the Navy and continued in Arctic defense operations, sinkage of German submarines, naval escorts, security at ports along America's coasts, and life-saving services such as search and rescue. During the early part of the war, the primary mission of the Coast Guard was to sink German U-boats and submarines that were concentrated across the Atlantic. Also, port security was of critical importance, and many cutters patrolled coastal areas such as beaches and docks. During the latter part of the war, the Coast Guard's main mission transitioned to search and rescue as a result of torpedo attacks made along the coast of the United States and over the Atlantic. The Coast Guard would also promote search and rescue operations in Normandy as well for the latter part of the war.